Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I'm George L. Masri, the host of the Well Off Podcast, and on this episode, I interviewed Michael Dominguez, who is the founder of Doors to Wealth Real Estate Group. It's a team of realtors that focus on educating and helping people get into real estate investments and also buy residential real estate. So Michael's backstory, he bought his first property in 2008 after getting his license and then continued to buy real estate for the next 10 years. Since then, he's kind of retired, not exactly, but he's taking a little step back from real estate sales and from everything and just enjoying life. He's the author of Armchair Real Estate Millionaire. And on this episode, we talked a lot about what his mentors helped teach him. We talk about advice for newer investors, why you shouldn't buy the cheapest property. A lot of people talk about that today, buying the cheapest property in whatever city, and he argues against doing that. We talked about the importance of focus and building relationships with your tradespeople, your plumbers, your electricians, and then also how to treat your real estate properties, your rental properties, like a business rather than just saying I own one or two properties. There's a lot of good stuff on here. I know you're going to enjoy it. And if you do, I ask you to leave us a review on the Apple Podcast platform and then to also subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be greatly appreciated. And if you want to connect with me and you want me to kind of give you some advice on what I believe you should do to help you grow your real estate portfolio, you can go to welloff.ca, book a call. I'm more than happy to do what I can to help. So I truly appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate all your support throughout the last few years that we've been doing this podcast, and looking forward to connecting with you soon. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Michael Dominguez. Michael, welcome. I appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, so I like to start off every time. I always ask, tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and one or two things you remember.
Wow, that's throwing me for a loop here. I wasn't expecting that one. Childhood. I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, and so I went to school there through the years, and I was a budding entrepreneur when I was a kid. I was for anybody who's old enough to remember, I was there was an episode or a TV show called Family Ties, and Michael J. Fox played a character called Alex P. Keaton, and so he was like a budding entrepreneur, and he was always trying to find a way of making more money. And so in my teenage years, I never wore a suit and tie, but I did have a briefcase. I was that nerdy. And so I was very entrepreneurial. I was part of the Entrepreneurs Club in university, and really had this goal of building wealth and being in business. And you know, when you get those people asking you, they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And somebody says, oh, I want to be an astronaut or a fireman. My answer was, I want to be a millionaire. And so it's funny enough, when I got into my 20s, I finished university, met a girl, started a 9-to-5 job, got married, had a kid. My entrepreneurial spirit kind of dissipated in my 20s and my 30s because you start getting focused on life. And it wasn't until I hit my 40s that I really started to reemerge and bring up my inner teenage childhood.
Yeah. And actually, I noticed that you said you started, I believe, investing in 2008 after you got your real estate license. So yeah. What happened? Like, did you just decide you didn't want your 9-to-5 anymore? You want to start doing things differently?
Yeah. So my background is I got promoted a number of times. And so I was in upper middle management in retail. I worked for about 14 years for those in Canada. They'd know the company called Pet Value Canada. It was a pet food and supply franchise. And my role was I was franchise sales manager. So I was working with a number of people as they were looking to change their lives by getting into business for themselves and running a franchise as an owner operator. So I helped facilitate that. And I really felt that they were my people. I really resonated with the people that were taking chances and making a difference in their lives. So, but honestly, come 2006, 2007, I was in a place where I was just getting tired of the commute, tired of the bureaucracy, and tired of the 9-to-5. And honestly, I really wasn't getting ahead financially. I was in much the same position as I was approaching 40 as I was when I was 30. And that was an aha moment itself, is that I was obviously doing the same mistakes over and over again. And so I had the opportunity to be introduced to real estate. I was buying the house that actually I'm in right now And my realtor, who was also a manager, said, I think you'd be a really good realtor. And I sort of said, oh yeah, I'm sure you say that to everybody. And she said, no, I think you'd be really good for it. But within a year, as you said, I started to focus on the investors. I just, again, gravitated to my people and helped a few of them buy some really great properties. And a lot of them were single family homes with additional dwelling units, duplexes. And I thought, this is my future. I could just see myself becoming an investor agent. And honestly, I bought my first couple properties as much to build wealth as it did to provide me with credibility as a realtor. And that's sort of how I got started.
Nice. Isn't that amazing how sometimes somebody just says something to you and then it just clicks and your whole, like, the course of your life changes from that one thing?
Yeah, I would never, ever, ever have thought of becoming a realtor. I right or wrong, I sort of had a negative connotation with being in sales and stuff like that. And meanwhile, I was kind of in sales anyway. I was selling franchises. But yeah, I left the security of the 9 to 5 job where I was making, I don't know, 70, 80 grand a year. And my first year as a realtor, I made just as much money and never looked back from there. And, now it's ridiculous how much I used to work so hard for so little money and be happy to do it too.
Yeah. So you wrote a book, Armchair Real Estate Millionaire.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that. What does that even mean?
sure. When I got started, I was very fortunate to have some incredible mentors along the way. People who you may know of, Don R. Campbell, for example, Patrick Franzi with Rain. Honestly, Durham REI, Quentin D'Souza was a great influence as far as helping me out. And as a realtor, I had people like Brian Buffini, who was an incredible mentor from that perspective as well. And not necessarily always in person, but just simply some of their writings and teachings and such like that. So it always kind of surprised me, especially with Don Campbell, for example, where in many cases he actually physically took me aside and he helped me out along the way. And I remember asking him a number of times, I said, why the heck are you leaving British Columbia and coming all the way to Ontario to do these events? Because you don't need to do this anymore. And he says, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't need to, but I just enjoy helping out the next generation. And it was an aha moment for me because I always thought when I was in my 20s and teens that the wealthier people were, they were almost like this exclusive club. And as I was making my way up the corporate ladder, or the life ladder, or the wealth ladder, I'd have the richer people that were kicking me down. And that's the impression that I thought I was going to have. But in actual fact, they were reaching behind them and pulling me up a couple rungs. And I always swore to myself that if I ever reached a point where I was at a level of success, that I would pay it forward to the next generation of investors. And that's kind of where it happened. Is the book came from that genesis. I'm a bit of a storyteller. I like to have put my little spins on things. And the book was written as a way of teaching people to buy their first, second, and third investment properties and to really get started in real estate. And I said this in the book many times, is this is a part-time job that can make you a millionaire. And so that's the term armchair. It's not absentee, but it's certainly a very casual part-time job. And if you buy the right properties, the quality properties in quality neighborhoods, you can actually attract quality tenants and have very little day-to-day work and hold on to the properties long-term and make some quality profits. You don't need to do flipping, just simply buy and hold and buy the right assets. That's what we do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I love what you're saying about wanting to pay it forward. I think a lot of people, when they reach a certain level of success, that becomes a really important factor for them. And it's cool that this is your way. The book is your way of kind of exposing what you've done so that other people can do it as well.
Yeah, and at first my focus was going to be a little bit of my story, and then it was going to be how to but there's so many books that are out there that are, how I went from nothing to a gazillionaire in 10 years. And a lot of people read these books and they say, oh, that's cool. And they give it a little applause and stuff like that. But I really felt that to really make a difference was to focus on the person buying that first, second, and third property, because in my opinion, those are the most difficult ones to do. Obviously you can use a lot of the same tips and tricks to buy that 10th property that you did for property number one. And maybe perhaps didn't buy the right type of properties. Somebody listening here, and they're dealing with crappy tenants in a crappy location. Take a look at some of the education we provide in the book. I use a lot of the mindset of finding a quality location, what makes a quality location, because again, it seems obvious once you've read it, but until you've read it, it's an aha moment in some cases.
Yeah. So I've been investing since 2017, and every property I bought so far, other than my primary home, has been in a crappy location, like every single one. And I've had a lot of crappy, I shouldn't say crappy, I've had a lot of difficult tenants, but I think like in time, we've been able to fix these up and increase the quality of the work, of the kitchen and everything, make it look really nice. And we've been able to draw good tenants that way. I'm not trying to like downplay what you're saying at all. I agree. If you have a great location, you usually eliminate the problem of attracting certain tenants. So I think that would be a huge help for a lot of people, because not everyone has the patience and the ability to improve these properties and draw the right people. You have to be very careful about who you put in to your units if you're in a bad location.
100%. And the reality is that if you're truly in a weaker location, and even if you did fix up your place and made it so it's the prettiest house on the street, the reality is that you're truly in a poor location. Likely all the houses around you are crappy. The school district where your tenant's potential child is going to go to school is a crappy area. It's a bad scenario all around.
Yes.
I also focus on one of the things that I really feel is so important, and we don't spend enough time talking about it or thinking about it, but I'm looking for a market that is in an appreciating area. Now, for those of us listening in the GTA, we've been very blessed that we're in one of the best markets in North America. The challenge with that is that we've got raising house prices. So the temptation is to go to a secondary or even a tertiary market where the population hasn't changed in the last 25, 30 years. But we spend a lot of time talking about just because the property is cheap doesn't mean it's a good deal.
Yeah.
And buying a quality property in a quality neighborhood also includes having a market where there's a growing GDP, there's a growing population base, a growing job force, growing transit, and those are all positive situations that lead to eventual increases in rental values and eventually increases in property values.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you touched on like a good property in a good neighborhood, you're going to have good schools. And if you're in a bad neighborhood, you're going to have bad schools. So I think one thing that's really important in that is to know what kind of tenant you want. If you're looking for a family, then yes, being in a good location is great. But if you are looking for like a young professional where they don't really care too much about the school, then maybe that secondary like a level B or C grade location might work for that person.
You're right, but I had some properties that were in B and C locations, which I've now sold them all. And the reason for that is I was able to attract some good tenants, the people that weren't from the area, but typically within a year they'd be moving out because they realized that if they were making real good money, they said, you know what, there's the police have been by our street 20 times in the last year. I don't need this crap.
Yes.
And that's really what's happened. And so all we were able to attract were the B and C tenants with lower credit scores, other issues, didn't pay the rent as much. I could tell you that during the pandemic, we had not only us, but many of our clients, because I've been a full-time realtor in the past as well, focusing on investors for many years. And many of pretty much none of our clients had missed rent payments because, again, we had quality tenants. We actually, in the last 6 months, we placed a tenant in one of our units. She's a lawyer that just got out of school, making six figures. Her husband works at the city, one of the towns. And so between the two of them, they're making close to about 160, 170,000 a year with credit scores about 800. Like, holy crap. And the reason why they can't buy is because she's got all of her student loans and she's probably 2 or 3 years away from buying. Like, but that's as guaranteed of a tenant as you could possibly have. And they've been taking care of the place. And you just simply can't attract that. If you go in that crappy property in a crappy neighborhood, you're just not going to attract the A+ tenant. You're just not.
Oh, 100%. And I think like what you're trying to share is your model, armchair investing. If you want to have like a good long-term tenant, then you need to be in a good location, 100%. I think what I'm trying to share is just like for those people that maybe are just starting out and they don't have the budget to buy $1 million property, they might be forced, if they want to get started, to buy in a worse location and then build some equity and maybe move on to the better location later on.
And there's always nothing's ever black and white. If you are having to find a discounted property, it doesn't hurt to still look at some of the stuff I talk about in chapter 2 and 3, as far as I use the term becoming an insider trader. The more knowledgeable you can be about a region, the better you are. And so some of the insider stuff that a good investor should have are things like, where is the transit going? What's the population estimates going forward? Is there a new employer that's coming into town that's going to have an influence? Is there an employer that's moving out of town that's going to really affect the market? These are things that don't take a lot of time to research. It really doesn't. But by doing a little bit of front-end work, you can either say, yeah, this is the market for me, or, hey, maybe I'll look at a different opportunity as well. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Just make sure that you don't make a drastic mistake and you're stuck with a real dog that you can't even sell or rent.
Sure. Oh, 100%. Earlier on, you touched on a few people that kind of like inspired you and motivated you. You touched on Brian Buffini, which I think a lot of people don't know about because they're not realtors, the people that are listening, but I've also been influenced a lot by him. In fact, a part of the reason that I met my wife was through their groups, like their group meetings that they used to have.
Cool.
So tell me a little bit about what you learned from specifically Brian Buffini and some of the things that you've carried with you into other aspects of your professional life.
Sure. One of his greatest slogans he does, and even though whether you're a realtor or not, I do recommend that you listen to some of his education, his teachings. He teaches a lot of non-realtors some of the same stuff. And if you're in sales in any way, one of his taglines is "Work by referral and live the good life." And I made it my mission as I built my realtor business that I was going to build a really strong database and use all of my advertising and efforts towards my existing database, and not to try to find some stranger and try to bring them on board. So. And I've used that in many elements of my life, where instead of trying to always make new acquaintances and friends, you build your power team, you build your network, and then you just, you don't take them for granted. You treat them well. And that could include everyone from an HVAC guy to a plumber to whatever. Working with someone like that, it's you treat them well, and then you get that furnace that goes out the worst day in February, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get put to the top of the list. And I'm not doing it from a self-serving standpoint. I just feel it's the right thing to do. And it's great to build relationships like that. So that's one thing that I've learned from him. Another thing he taught me was to make your business larger, make your focus smaller. And how that can apply to investors is I talked to a number of young investors that are thinking about investing on this one because they got this great opportunity in Sudbury, and then they got another great opportunity in Saskatoon, and then oh geez, I found something in Florida, and you can't be an expert in all those areas. You just cannot have power team. You can't know everything about those things. You're in many cases the weakest link in that entire acquisition. I strongly recommend that you really learn a market well, and then to make that your focus. And I can tell you that in my city that I invest in, which is mainly Oshawa, Ontario, I don't even invest in all of Oshawa. I invest in one or two regions within Oshawa is where most of my properties are. But everything that ever came out on those streets, I knew when it was on the market because I knew I used to drive up and down. I used to bike up and down those streets. So I knew it really, really well. And so when a property was available, I knew most everything I could tell you about that property, when it was built, you know, likely scenarios of issues with that property, stuff like that. And it just simply made me a better investor.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you're saying about being good to like everyone you work with, the HVAC guys and everyone else. I think that's a huge thing. Even, you know, like sometimes you might have a conflict with certain people, but being good to them, that's one thing that I've learned as well. It goes a long way because, like you said, will they will understand that you're treating them a certain way because they often get treated the opposite way by a lot of other people. So it's nice to have that attitude.
Yeah, they get taken for granted so often, and they're only called when they're needed. And you know, again, it doesn't take a lot to just simply to keep them in the loop and about certain scenarios. Maybe, you know, again, I'm in the real estate industry, so one of the things that I would often do is if I knew they lived at 123 Maple Street and there was a house that sold on their neighborhood, I would just simply give them an FYI. Hey, the house down the street just sold. Here's what it sold for. It didn't take more than 30 seconds of my time, but you know, again, that just let them know that I was thinking about them. You know, sometimes I'd take them out for lunch because, you know, honestly, I've always been a big believer. And actually, they teach that in Feeney as well, as never eat alone. Always, you know, take people out for lunch. If you're in sales, you shouldn't be doing that. And so I took that to heart, and I did take out a lot of my contractors and service professionals and such like that, and just touch base. And in many cases, I would give them, even before I was an author, I would give advice and ideas and help them find ways of building their wealth and taking action. So, you know, that's, you know, again, it just set me apart from a lot of their other clients for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. I never actually have taken any of the people that I work with out to lunch. I don't know why, but I think I'll work on doing that. I think that's a great idea. I wanted to ask you, so for anyone listening to this that maybe they're a newer investor, maybe they have like less than 3 properties, what advice do you have for people like that?
Well, you know, some of the stuff we already touched base on, first off, was, again, I don't want to just gloss over this. Becoming a market expert just sets you so much ahead of everybody else. And, you know, you might have heard it from someone else, but you don't necessarily take it to heart. And just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's a good deal. You know, you want it to fit your profile. I can't speak for every listener here, but most of us have a budget of how much money we have available from a down payment standpoint and how many properties we can carry. I don't care if you've got $100,000 or $5 million, you've got a limit. So the reality is that you're in a situation where there's only so many properties that you could buy. You can't buy everything. There's opportunities all around. So my advice to you is to eliminate the noise, to sort of narrow in on where you want to invest, the style of property you want to invest. And then when that property does come, the part 2 to the advice is to put yourself in the best position to be ready. And that includes working with your mortgage specialist and making sure that you can afford it. In today's market, mainly all across North America, but certainly in the GTA, you can't go in not knowing your financial situation. You need to be completely ready and just put yourself in a position that you can come in with a strong offer. And honestly, just if the location is right, the property is right, the research you've done supports the property, and it's important just to jump in. I could tell you that real estate was a great investment 50 years ago. It was a great investment 25 years ago. It was a great investment 5 and 2 years ago. And I could tell you that in 2030 and 2040, people are going to be looking back to 2021, 2022, and they're going to say, geez, I should have bought property when it was so cheap. So as much as we think it's expensive right now, all indications are supporting the fact that the values are going to go nothing but up. And we could talk about that if you wanted to. But yeah, the supply and demand is just going to keep rising as far as demand, and supply is not going up at all. So.
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of recap what you're saying, but the advice that you have would be, first of all, location. So make sure you pick the right one. Keep your focus small. Don't just buy cheap properties because they're cheap. Make sure you're buying the right property for you. And also, you didn't say this now, but you said it earlier. But also focus on relationships with your contractors, with your tradespeople, and also just with other people that you might partner with, or whatever the case might be, whatever your model is.
Yeah, and I'll give you one more as well, is treat your business, your real estate business, like a business. And that's not a Buffini thing. That's more of a Don Campbell thing. But so many of us don't think of this as a business. It's just, oh, I own a couple of properties. Well, have, if they're, whether they're in a corporation or not, have separate bank accounts, treat them like a business. And because honest, and your tenants are not just tenants, they're your clients. Yeah. And treat them well as well. One thing I'm doing, for Christmas is I'm planning on giving everybody a copy of my book. And, again, somebody might be offended by that. They say, boy, this guy's become a millionaire just based on owning the real estate property that I'm renting. But my goal is to try to teach them and sort of say, hey, if anybody wants to actually take action, I'm prepared to offer you some counseling and coaching so that you can eventually buy a property on your own. It's, if I can help somebody out who's been paying me rent every month for the last 1 or 5 years, I'll do it. And the side benefit, of course, if they move out, I'm likely going to be able to rent it for a few $100s more. But so that's a benefit. But honestly, at the end of the day, these are people that have been really good to my wife and I want to treat them well as well. And then again, I'm treating them like clients.
100%. And maybe one thing that I'll add to that is when you're treating it as a business, don't get too emotionally involved. If a tenant does something to you or whatever, don't let it get to you. It's a business. You got to deal with it, figure out the best course of action, and just go from there.
Excellent point. And there are days, believe me, there are days where you look at your business and sort of say, holy crap, what the hell am I doing? I haven't done this in a while, but I've gone to a property on a Sunday afternoon cleaning up, the former tenant's dog crap, and before a new tenant moves in, I'm thinking, I don't even clean up my own dog shit. But I know I've got to clean up some tenant's dog crap, but then I sort of think back and I sort of say, okay, but how has this been changing my life? And it's been putting me in a position of pretty impressive of wealth growth that I would never have expected 15 years ago. It's amazing how it's changed my life. And so you have to distance yourself from the day-to-day inconveniences. And if you're a new person getting going in real estate, you're afraid of those midnight phone calls from tenants and such like that. I'm telling you, if you buy a quality property and get some quality tenants, my biggest challenge is my tenants never call me. I have to reach out to them and say, is there anything wrong? And they say, yeah, but I didn't want to bother you and stuff like that. And so I have to actually do stuff because I don't want to have any deferred maintenance in my properties because it could lead to bigger issues. And so they are so appreciative because I'm actually following up with them before they even come up with the issues. And long term, it's been building me a lot of wealth. So I've been happy.
Awesome. Okay, so is there anything else you want to add before we move on to the next section?
You're in the lead. Go for it.
Okay. The next section is the random 5. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, that's scary. Okay.
I know people get scared by this one, but the first one is, what would be the best and worst part of being a cat, in your opinion?
A cat. Well, the best part undoubtedly is that your flexibility, that you can pleasure yourself in many different ways that I won't have the ability of doing myself. Has anybody else answered that question?
No, it's always random.
Okay.
It's different every time. So
okay. The worst part for me is I would be I don't have thumbs, so I can't open and close doors, and so I can get trapped in a place, and that would be my worst thing as well. It's just I'm dependent on humans to allow me into houses, so that's the.
Okay, number 2, what challenge would you like to take on in the next 60 days?
What challenge? Actually, I am starting to take on this challenge. I'm actually so many people have been asking me for the longest time to create an audiobook, and I don't really have the skill set to do that. I like talking to people and such like that, but I'm shitty at reading aloud. I just from grade school on, I just didn't have that skill set. So I went to a technical engineer last week to try to do it. I did as bad as I thought I would. So now I'm working with a voice actor, and we're gonna put together an audible book for this. And so that's the project I'm taking on. I'm sort of coordinating the whole event. So yeah.
Cool. It seems like you're like 100 all in, 100%. You're making this happen, and you're reaching as many people as possible. That's great.
Well, that's, and the funny thing is for anybody who thinks that books are going to make you a lot of money, I could tell you that as of right now, like I make a whopping $6 per book. So, I've made maybe, I don't know, like $5,000-6,000 in revenue so far. And I've spent about 40,000, assuming I'm working for $0.00, mind you. I've spent about 40,000 in coaching and mentorship along the way to get my book to reality. So this was definitely a passion project versus a lucrative project.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Yeah. All right. Number 3, what's the most difficult thing that you still do each day?
My life has been changing a lot in the last couple of years. I'm now, I'm actually starting to tell people I am retired as a realtor. I'm not officially, I'm still doing the odd deal, but yeah, my life is changing a lot more, where I don't have my 9-to-5 job. I don't have to get up in the morning if I don't feel like doing any real estate. Yeah, life is good right now. I'm trying to travel more if they let me out of the country, and yeah, I don't have, my life is good right now. I don't want to have anything to complain about every day.
Okay. The most difficult thing for you to do is just relax every day.
Actually, that is more difficult than you think it is. Like sometimes I start twiddling my thumbs and I say, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And so I just, one thing I've been doing a lot of is I'm watching a lot of classic movies. There's so many movies that I've always said, well, one day I'm going to watch this. One day I'm going to watch this. So this is the year that's my one day. So
cool. Awesome. I'm glad things are going well for you, and you're getting to enjoy the fruit of your labor. Number 4, how long did it take for you to come up with your current signature? That
actually evolved during my university days. Again, I mentioned how I was a fan of Michael J. Fox, and so my name became, my middle initial actually is J. So I was using Michael J. Dominguez, and then during university, I short formed it to MJ Dominguez, and then it sort of became MJ and sort of a bunch of little scribbles, and that's the signature I've been doing for pretty much for 30 some odd years. So.
Awesome. Cool. Number 5, what was the last dream you can remember about?
Boy, oh boy. Actually, okay. Sometimes I get random business ideas when or just concepts, and I just wake up and I've actually got a notebook or my phone is my notebook, and I just make notes on it on a regular basis. So as funny as this is, I don't know how I got this idea, but I got a potential sitcom that just sort of randomly came in my head, and I just started making notes. That was just a couple of days ago. So that's the idea I have. So I'm not going to go into my whole sitcom pitch because I haven't got it all evolved yet. But yeah, I'm just the type of person that like I write down business ideas, and 9 out of 10 I never do, but occasionally I've actually turned, like my book, for example, some chapters I just came up with it while I was sleeping at night, and then the next day it just flowed. It just came together. So yeah. Cool. So no, I do that.
Awesome. So
tough questions.
Yeah, I know. You got to take a few seconds to think about it. But that was it. That was the random 5. So the last part of this is to tell people how they could reach you and what services you provide.
Yeah. Well, the website is www.armchairrealestatemillionaire.com, and you can find my book on Amazon as well, or Indigo, I guess, as well. And if you do go on my website, I'm info@armchairrealestatemillionaire.com, and certainly reach out to me. And if you have any questions, you can certainly do that. For any realtors in the room, if you decide you want to buy things of 10 or more of my book and give them out to some of your clients, one thing I've been offering to some of the realtors more in my neighborhood is I'll give you a one-on-one coaching for an hour or so, whether it to become a better investor realtor or become a better investor in general. And honestly, as far as I'm not looking at doing ongoing coaching or mentorship, that's not really what my goals are. I'm just trying to live my best life. I use the term I'm living the armchair lifestyle. I just came back about a month ago. I took my Corvette convertible to the United States and I drove across Route 66 from Chicago to Santa Monica, California. And again, just living my best life. Again, that was my goal. I worked hard for 15 years as a realtor and a real estate agent, or as an investor. And now I'm, to your point, I'm benefiting from that.
Yeah, good. I'm really happy to hear things are going well for you. I wish you all the best moving forward. And once again, I appreciate you doing this, and it was great connecting with you.
Really was. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Well Off Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then I'd really appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes and let us know your thoughts. In order for us to get a larger audience, it's really important to have reviews, so your support is extremely appreciated. And also, don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, I'm George Masri. Have a great day.